I'm Malcolm Van Delst, and this is an excerpt from How Low Can You Go, Book 5 in the Do the Wrong Thing series. Last week in How Low Can You Go, Ava blew out her ears at a heavy metal concert, went to the first Lollapalooza, and found out that an artist idol of hers would be teaching her photography at U of Arbor. This week, I'm revisiting stuff from 3 weeks ago with edits and additions. I get the sense that some people would like more context added by the older Ava as she recounts the events of her life. So yeah, tell me if these edits and additions work. This is the chapter called It Gets Cold. It starts with an intro section to the Amoeba Art House. That's more like a derelict place where people hang out. And the section where Greg and Ava call each other bitch and asshole over the division of beer in the bar. Then making your own booze. The punker, dirtier, I guess poorer, braver, because they do live in houses without heat throughout the winter, because they are more serious, because they listen to louder, angrier music than the nerd crowd. Music like Greg plays, only newer, more underground. You can tell that their minds are full of things you don't want to hear about, making them realer, darker. I wouldn't want to live with the more morose punks, only visit and see what their homes are like. I'm curious. They made their own booze. I assumed you need a factory to make booze, but Greg says they put a copper wire in a pot and boiled rubbing alcohol on top of their stove. A copper coil, a household pot, and alcohol that you can buy at the drugstore for next to nothing. It's hard to get my head around. It's like magic. Well, not quite. Don't go there and don't drink it. Greg is adamant. Greg is not particularly chivalrous or, what's the word, concerned, caring, protective. He doesn't look out for me. I'm surprised he's this steadfast on not drinking this homemade alcohol. Why not? I ask. Because I did and it's bad, he says, looking up from where he's tapping his cigarette in an ashtray. I woke up in a snowbank. Couldn't remember a thing. I was confused, barely found my way home. That shit is dangerous. He stares at me for a few seconds, contempt radiating from his pores. Then he looks away. Remove. Anja, the woman who works for Bombardier, follows us to Amoeba, still showing up in office pumps and pastel suits. She buys Simon's plank with the faceless creature and one of his puppies. He has a German shepherd something mutt that gets pregnant and gives birth. I'm from Serbia, she tells me one night. Whoa, I say, but you grew up here? Anja has no discernible accent. I was 10 when we came here. You still have family? Yes, she nods. Are they okay? Not really, but they're alive. What was it like growing up there? My grandmother couldn't leave her bed, so she'd demand I come to her so she could whump me across the head. I furrow my brow. Nothing about Anja makes sense. That's what it was like, she adds. And remove. Chubby, much older than anyone, even Simon. Brownish blonde, dull, frizzy hair, thick, red skin on his face, and ruddy fingers that push like sausages from hand pillows, which push from tattered sleeves of several coats worn one on top of the other. He's quiet, but obsessively strokes an old piece of fur. Wait, what? That's not fur. It's a book. A Bible. I stare. Not fur, but a fanned out and deformed book. Someone, I suppose he, has stroked the open edge of the tome until the pages have half disappeared and turned brown where they're visible, looking like an old fur collar. I never see this guy or his book again, and I never find out who he is. September 12th, 2017, 5:10 p.m. A list of ugly scenes. When I started this series, these beats were the purpose of writing, showing what no one wants to see. But it's hard to make this stuff attractive or shocking enough to be readable, let alone entertaining. I am pig-headed, convinced, certain, insistent that what I've seen and experienced is valuable when, well, people judge, and unless you're sick, Irvine Walsh or William S. Burroughs, they don't want to read ugliness. Anyway, continuing as you do when you set yourself a goal, even if it's as misguided as making what is grotesque beautiful. Yes, shit is a natural part of our world, and yes, to a fly, it's like a grass and flower-covered meadow with the forest on the edge where birds sing and baby deer frolic with baby chipmunks. I was a fly when I was in this, I suppose. No, I wasn't. Fighting. Or had I given up? I was a coward, terrified of love. I still am. Christmas Day, 1990. Before heading to Owen's, I stop at Mac's Milk for smokes. The store smells strongly of aftershave. Odd. I don't see any well-dressed and groomed men in here. Only me, the clerk, and in front of me, a homeless-looking dude with long, matted hair. He throws his change at the clerk, who scrambles to pick it up. "Give me a bottle of Aqua Velva," the homeless guy snarls. I think this is the worst thing I've ever seen on Christmas until I leave the Max and see the same homeless guy squatting in the doorway of the Repertoire Cinema next door, pants down, a coil of shit below him. Owen and I find a restaurant, more of a haphazard cafe that's open. It's got cheap plastic tables and chairs in a room that looks like it was meant to be an office. A brown-skinned woman, Iranian or Persian, serves us. We order beer with breakfast. It's not bad this Christmas. I'm not alone with nowhere to go. There are other people like me, Owen, for example. "Did you hear that Greg went back to his parents' place in Amarillo?" Owen queries. "What?" I respond. I haven't seen Greg since he talked me out of trying the stovetop moonshine. He wants to stop drinking. Owen grins, more to himself than to me, shaking his head. I've never heard Greg talk about stopping drinking. We're all falling forever with no introspection. Maybe the moonshine was a cliff for Greg, jutting out from the darkness and stopping him. Owen and I move on from this topic. We laugh away the day. September 17th, 2017, 5:06 p.m. I shouldn't be messing around with more thoughts on my past life, if I ever want to finish this book. But I love the way memory jumps up with odd images and snippets of conversation, like the moonshine cliff I surmised that broke Greg's fall. This memory of Emily, not my Emily, but Kara, the teenage drug dealer's friend. Emily is cute, chubby, black, also a teenager. She's the only non-white person in the nerd amoeba orbit. Emily and I walk down a street, snowbanks lining the sidewalk, clouds covering the sun, but it's warmish. Maybe it's end of winter, or maybe it's one of those fluke days when everything gets warm in the middle of the cold season. Maybe I'm merely adjusted to... No, it's definitely warmer and wetter. The way that air gains weight and feels like a blanket around you, as opposed to when it's sunny, clear, and that same air disappears. We've never spoken at Nerd or Amoeba beyond highs, how are yas, and if those count, smiles. I tell her that I'd marry Greg if he wanted to get married. She giggles and says, "Francis says she'd have his baby if he wanted and you'd marry him." Francis, mentally ill, skeletally thin, a friend of Simon's. At Amoeba, she sits in corners or against walls, deathly still and silent. Why is Francis saying she'd have Greg's baby? I've never seen Greg talking to her. He wouldn't. It'll be decades before I realize that Francis would say she'd have Greg's baby because they'd slept together. Even as I type those words, it's hard for me to comprehend or visualize. I don't want to I don't want to see the sex act. Ew. But even the foreplay, or whatever you want to call it, the "Hey, how are you? How's your night going?" when two people meet and talk. Maybe she followed him home and knocked meekly on his door until one of his roommates opened up. Unless Greg knocked on her door, though that is one disgusting turn of events to contemplate. Her, so fragile, both in mind and body and spirit. Pushing your body against, oh my God, she'd break. Anyone knocking on her door for sex, she's not all there. She's not holding it together. She's got to be on heavy drugs. There's no way she works or pays her own rent. She can't consent to sex, but she wants to have a baby. Ah, yes, I remember more. Emily and I talked about Greg going home to his parents. I must have said that I'd marry him if he stopped drinking. But Francis, Emily tells me, would go one further and have his baby. Disgust, amazement, and I don't know what, this half-dead creature making a claim on my boyfriend, ex-boyfriend. I'm strong. I take no shit. That's why I couldn't see that Greg was fucking, her. I was sharing Greg's penis with, I'm sorry, but the idea of his body being in contact with, him and I weren't in contact anymore, but it's like he went from me to a diseased wraith, and I'm strong. I take no shit. Her claim on my ex-boyfriend makes me question everything I believe about myself. That's why I blocked it all out. A few months after this conversation, Emily dies in a motorcycle accident. She'll have been riding with a 40-year-old guy with a mullet who wore high-waisted, acid-washed jeans and pointy-toed cowboy boots when he came every so often to Amoeba. As with Frances and Greg, I'll struggle. Emily and this guy knew each other well enough to be on a motorcycle together? I'm constantly reminded how little I know of the human beings around me, even now. The move takes all day. I've never seen people move so slow, take so many breaks. Owen, two friends of his that I've never met before, and me. The friends aren't much help. They mostly sit around drinking. For lunch, Owen makes macaroni and cheese, one last meal cooked in his funky little kitchen. He has no milk, so he uses mayonnaise and ketchup. No one's hungry. He leaves the mess on the stove while we take loads to my place in the back of his friend's car and have beer breaks. What's that smell? Oh, the macaroni. Owen left the lid on low. It reeks like old socks. Cockroaches crawl over it, but I shoo them away, grinning, and scoop the stuff into a small bowl. Modern Canadian casu marzu. At my place, Owen puts his single futon on top of the unpacked boxes I've piled against the living room wall. He stacks his own boxes and belongings around mine and sets his ghetto blaster at the foot of his bed.